This Right, the silence tells me that we're good to go. Great. But I think we need Volker. He's online. Amazing. Good. Can't do without Volker. Super, but thank you very much for coming back from what I trusted was a healthy lunch. I'm full. I also hope that you're still enjoying the wealth of knowledge and insights that's flowing in this room, much like the Chao Phraya River just outside. We are in Bangkok after all. So what I'm going to do is to set the scene for this conversation on statistical inclusion before I introduce the distinguished panel or distinguished I don't even know what the right, friends that will engage in a dialogue on inclusion in national statistics. So statistical inclusion of forcibly displaced and stateless populations is no longer a technical issue. It is a policy imperative and increasingly becoming a best practice. We've heard from the policy panels this morning and yesterday how much the work towards returns and self-reliance needs data and increasingly needs nationally owned data. In a context of shrinking budgets and rising needs, better data and better statistics is essential for better decisions, better targeting, and more coherent responses. Statistical inclusion strengthens national leadership, and it really brings together the government, the development actors, and the humanitarian agencies around a shared evidence base. We have also seen a real momentum on inclusion in national statistics for quite a while now. And sometimes I have to pinch myself to sort of make sure that momentum still is carrying on, but it is. You know, at the Joint Data Center, we focused on inclusion in national statistics since our inception in 2019. And as we sort of grew the experience and progressed, by 2024, when we were initiating our current strategy, we were bold enough to make it a strategic priority. And since then, we count 25 countries that explicitly include forcibly displaced in national surveys. And we know that that progress extends beyond us now, that lots is happening in countries that are not necessarily benefiting from activities that the JDC is investing in. A key enabler of that progress has been the development of global statistical standards. So the expert group on refugee, IDP, and statelessness statistics has produced recommendations that help guide the inclusion of these populations into national data systems. And we've been a proud supporter of EGRIS for a long time. But one more thing in terms of building up that momentum has been that together with the EGRIS and the government of Djibouti, back in 2023, we sponsored or convened a multi-stakeholder pledge on inclusion in national statistical systems and surveys, which brought around 100 pledges in that sort of global policy forum. Many host countries, but also very many actors who were both investing, who wanted to invest financing and technical support to achieve that. So at the JDC, we focused on socioeconomic surveys as an entry point into national statistical systems. That was sort of what we carved out to be our added value. But surveys are obviously significant in that story, but inclusion can also advance through sectoral government data and administrative data systems. So we recognize that that's a broader field, and I'm sure that our colleagues here will speak a little to that point as well. And a central question in that is how inclusion in national systems becomes sustainable, mainstreamed, and something that is truly government-owned. And that is where today's discussion comes in. We're going to together explore that journey from implementation to impact, from research use to policy relevance, and to making inclusion in national statistical systems sustainable. And perhaps we will also be able to draw out some practical lessons that can help accelerate that progress in the years ahead. So that was by way of setting the scene. Now I'd like to introduce our conversant here, and I will start with Winida Albertha, who is a senior statistician from BPS-Statistics Indonesia. Welcome, Winida. She is currently tasked to modernize Indonesia's national statistical system, including on migration and mobility. Next to her, I have Rachael Beaven. She is director from the Statistics Division in UN's Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, or ESCAP as we like to call you, who throughout her career has helped countries to modernize their statistical systems and to build core statistics. Welcome to you, Rachael. I then have our friend and mentor in Joint Data Center, Olivier Dupriez. He's the Deputy Chief Statistician and Advisor in the Development Data Group in the World Bank. Olivier advises data management and analytics and leads the bank's data innovation, data and knowledge innovation work. It's very nice to have you here, Olivier. And then last but not least, I have my good friend Volker Schimmel. He is the head of the Global Data Service at UNHCR. He is a humanitarian data information management veteran with experience from UNHCR, UNRWA, and OCHA. And I want to highlight that the Global Data Service is the home for UNHCR's global trends and the institutional host of EGRIS. So that's your gang. Now I will take you through a lot of questions here. I'd like to keep it a conversational style, but the way I'm going to do it is that I'm not going to ask you all the questions, but I'm going to pick you out, but where you feel that you have something to contribute, and I'm not calling you to answer the question, please just raise your hand or interrupt, and we keep it that sort of conversation style. I hope that works with everybody. Yeah? Excellent. So, Volker, since you're the farthest away in Copenhagen, I want to start with you. From your institutional perspective, what has been the most compelling argument or the most concrete result that has advanced the agenda of statistical inclusion in practice?
Thank you, Maja, and good afternoon, Bangkok. I'm glad that you have me join, even if it's online. And greetings to my fellow panelists. For me, it's been an exciting journey within UNHCR over the last 5-7 years, if we're counting generously. And it has been incredible to see how EGRIS in particular, but statistical inclusion as an overall approach has moved from a specialist discipline to a broadly adopted policy imperative. We've seen year over year that narrative being owned by our senior management ever more, to the point where we now are under our new High Commissioner with very ambitious targets for inclusion and self-reliance, are constantly reminded by non-technical colleagues, non-statisticians, on how important inclusion from the data perspective is. So that journey in and of itself was certainly top of the list for me. And from just the implementation perspective, I'll add one more point, which is the incredible success that we've had in country-level implementations in partnership with, whether it's through the JDC, institutions like the World Bank or UNICEF, but notably and most excitingly with national statistics offices. We've never had this in such an organized and sustainable fashion ever before. And the key now is to keep momentum under slightly adverse circumstances. But if we keep the trajectory, the future's bright.
Amazing, Volker. Thank you. Yes, and I have to chip in just to say how incredible it is to see so many UNHCR offices speaking to the National Statistical Office. I mean, that is a sea change in our relationship at country level. So that's just fantastic to see. Olivier, what would you have to say about that?
Well, before I say something about that, I just want to say that I'm not completely comfortable with the way you introduced me as a mentor to the JDC. I prefer you to say a big fan of the JDC. I was part of the team that worked, when was that in 2019, 18, when we created this fantastic project. So much more than a mentor. Now I think for the World Bank, the most compelling arguments for for the inclusion of forced displacement in national statistical system has been very clearly expressed by speakers yesterday, the colleague from African Development Bank, this morning from Asian Development Bank, from UNHCR as well, is the fact that very clearly forced displacement is not just a humanitarian crisis issue. It's really very, very much a development issue. When we see the scale of it, when we see the long-term dimension of forced displacement, when we see the new focus on self-reliance, very clearly this is something that the World Bank has to be involved in. We are not a humanitarian organization, clearly. We are a development bank. We're interested in long-term economic development for poverty alleviation, but working on issues of forced displacement makes a lot of sense. The bank, we are proud to be a data-driven organization, or we like to call ourselves the data bank and the knowledge bank. So we like data. We want to, at least we try to make good use of whatever data we can get to design, to target, to measure the impact of our project. Whenever we can, we want to use national data, as you mentioned. We can get data from many different sources, especially today. But when you want to have a dialogue with countries, especially on relatively sensitive issues, having national data, official data, is something that is much more powerful than getting data from private sector, from other places. So supporting national statistical system when the data is of high quality is absolutely essential to us. The mechanisms for the bank to intervene in forced displacement is an IDA window that was created in 2017, which is called the IDA window for host communities and refugees. So clearly we have both in the name. So if we have both in the names, it makes sense to have both in the data that will support this project and programs. These are concessional loans and grants that has so far totaled about $5.6 billion that countries can tap into. I think 21 countries have tapped into these projects. We had about 100 projects under the condition that these projects really establish new policies, procedure, legal framework, a little bit what we've seen this morning from Thailand. Obviously, this needs to come with a lot of data. So for us, again, the only way to make it happen is to have this inclusion. So the World Bank and this program can be both an incentive and maybe an arm twister also to make that happen. But it's absolutely essential to us.
Thank you, Olivier. That makes a lot of sense, and you're already sort of linking up to the journey that I was alluding to of this conversation, where we also will be talking a little bit about impact and what data means in terms of being transformed into policy and programming, especially with the kind of financial means that the World Bank has put forward. So thank you for that. I want to move to the next question because I think it's a nice extension, and I think this is where both Rachael and Winida will have some really good perspectives. So we're diving in on the technical point of view. And what would be nice to know is what are the main difficulties that may occur when including forcibly displaced or stateless people in national surveys, and what approaches have proven most effective overcoming these challenges. Obviously, we have the statistical recommendations which give guidance on inclusion, but you know, it's not just enough to have recommendations on how to do it. When rubber hits the road, that's where you really start understanding both the opportunities and the challenges. So Winida, may I invite you to say something about that?
Okay, thank you, Maja. Actually, I'm curious about the 25 countries that you're working with, so that I can, maybe next time you could also introduce them so that we can learn a lot from them also, the statistics practices, yeah. But regarding your question, I also learned about the statistical recommendation on built by EGRIS. There are 3 recommendations regarding statelessness, refugee statistics, and also for IDPs. Yeah. So when we, you asked about what difficulties, what are the challenges in implementing that. It's true, the recommendation itself is not enough when we are not implementing it. But regarding implementing, we see there are many also obstacles regarding regarding the methodological implementation, designs, and also resource. We need to add more question for perfectly capture these vulnerable forced displacement people in the questionnaire. However, Indonesia itself has put some questions that are in the recommendation. So as far as I know, since 2005 even. So we have questions regarding migration reasons, including the reason for migration due to conflict or insecurity, and also regarding the disasters. And recently on our intercensal census, intercensal survey, we also add the question regarding whether someone have identification, ID card, or no for those who are foreign population. However, back to the design limitation, even though we can include this question or this category in the survey, the result is not statistically enough to be disseminated. The number of observation is very small, and because of the initial, the design of the sampling only focusing the frame only for the usual settlement, not including for those who are living in the camp or in the special arrangement. So we found it's difficult to be implemented, even though we try to put it in the question. So that's from us.
Yeah, thank you, Winida. That's a great point. And actually, before I go to Rachael, I do want to give you the space, but I want to bounce off Volker just quickly, because that's Winida mentioned something very interesting: camp and non-camp populations. Volker, some perspectives on some of the technical challenges and how they are resolved would be great from you.
Thanks, Maja. The biggest challenge is probably the starting point and knowledge that we have that feeds into the sampling frame. And unfortunately, I would say the reality is that refugee camps are still a natural focus, both for decision makers as well as for an entire sort of support structure, whether national or international. But that in turn generates usually a good, amongst other things, foundation in terms of data, administrative data mostly. That is, by comparison, more difficult to mirror in non-camp or urban settings, because often in camps you have a dedicated, an isolated way of dealing with services, populations in general, and data as a result. That in itself can often be a barrier for inclusion and solution approaches. So let's not make any mistake in terms of the advantage on the data side being also a disadvantage, or coming from a disadvantage from an initial starting point on when to include and what inclusion means.
Thank you.
No, it is.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
No, it is.
Yes. Okay. I'm not sure I can give you huge solutions, but I will do my best just to say a little bit about what we're doing. So in ESCAP's statistics division, our main kind of partners are national statistics offices, and that's who we kind of primarily work with. And we recognize, you know, the kind of challenges we've been hearing about there, about survey design issues, sampling coverage, but also I think, you know, the biggest barrier is, of course, around kind of fear, mistrust, and, you know, from respondents. One thing that we have been doing in our work with national statistics offices, so back in at our last committee on statistics, which was in December 2024, that's where we actually decided as kind of a group of member states that national statistical offices actually agreed to really kind of push a whole of society approach in building their statistical systems. And that was really kind of done to kind of reflect the fact that they know that, you know, they can't do it on their own, and particularly not when we're trying to look at issues like this. And it is about actually how do we then help national statistical offices to engage with the whole of society, and not just when they disseminate data, but really from the beginning of the process. So how do they actually engage with citizens, with different communities, to really understand their data needs, their priorities? So not us just kind of going out there and saying, we've got this preset survey and we're assuming these are the things that are most important to you, but it's actually trying to help them to engage right at the beginning of the process, to find out from those communities, what do they really want? What does progress look like for them? So that is one of the things that actually we have had, you know, that kind of agreement on whole of society approach. And then to take that forward, we've set up what we call a Data and Statistics Horizon team, so a DASH team. We like that kind of terminology. But what that group is doing actually has been compiling country practices and some really examples of what's really going on, and kind of looking across the board at what countries are doing and then sharing it. So we regularly have Asia Pacific stats cafes where countries share what they're doing, and actually BPS, possibly they contribute the most actually, but certainly they're one of the key contributors in those sessions. But I think through Stats Cafes, they're just informal kind of webinars, but the point of them is to kind of have 2 or 3 countries presenting what they're doing on a particular topic or a kind of challenge, and sharing how it's going so far. And it's not about kind of having all the answers, but it is very much about, you know, how we're implementing these things, what the challenges we're facing, and then kind of discussing it together and really learning from each other. And I think we are seeing, you know, progress in terms of that. We recognize, you know, these things do take time, but I think working through the national statistical offices, we begin to see them actually being much more open to working with communities, with citizens, with private sector, but also with academics as well, and kind of recognizing that they can do so much more when they work collectively together.
Yeah, no, that's great, Rachel. Thank you. That's very rich, and I think that resonates really well with sort of the protection side of the population groups that we're discussing here in terms of statistical inclusion. I know that when enumerators are trained for some of the surveys that we've been supporting, we have an element of, for example, communicating on some of the protection issues and how they, as enumerators, when they go out, communicate with the people that they're going to survey. So that seems really a valuable initiative. We're going to move to impact now, swiftly. So we all have different institutional perspectives here and different levers for impact. What I'd like to ask is what type of impact have you actually seen emerging from statistical inclusion? In which ways have you seen statistical inclusive surveys influencing policies, programs, or responses? And have there been unexpected or unintended effects, whether positive or negative, that are worth highlighting in our conversation here? Can I start with you, Olivier, since you spoke about the window for host and refugees?
You can. So we had an example already this morning with Maja, Eugenia, who presented the work in Colombia. I mean, just to be completely honest, I was not involved in any of the project that I might mention this afternoon. I'm not the one who did any of the field work, so I'm not taking any credit for any of these. But I think that the project in Colombia is one that really had a lot of impact. I think, you know, there was someone from Colombia here. I think, what was it called? Pulso de la Migración, something like that. I don't know if my pronunciation is good enough for you to understand my Spanish. But basically, I mean, what it means is really, you know, collecting data regularly in collaboration with the country to, you know, generate data that really had a major impact on how the Venezuelan, you know, displaced population were considered, and you know, that's eventually gave them a you know, a status that they didn't have before. But that's not the only example. I think there was another one in Iraq, where you had two populations. You had the, you know, the forced displaced population that received some cash transfer, and then you have the social safety net of the country itself that was based on a proxy means test, which is basically also a cash transfer, but they were operating in completely independent ways, which, you know, is perfectly explainable because the, you know, the proxy means test would make use of variables that would probably not apply to the forcefully displaced population. But with the data analysis, with a lot of data collection, they managed to, you know, find a way to create, you know, the equivalent of a proxy means test for the forcibly displaced population, to have a system that's fair to all and that is better integrated in the national system. And then something that is probably closer to, you know, what we really doing within the bank. I would like to mention the, you know, the work that was done in Niger and Ethiopia on poverty assessment that covered both displaced population and non-displaced population, the host population. I think having a very clear understanding of the situation of both, to very clearly show that, you know, the host population are not necessarily better off. They might be better off, but they're not necessarily. And really understanding how these two populations compare in terms of poverty is absolutely essential. That is something that, you know, creates a lot of methodological issues. You know, when you collect this data, obviously some of the data that we have typically in our poverty surveys on assets ownership, on you know, income and others might not apply the same way to displaced population. So there was a lot of work to do on how can you create relatively comparable estimates, especially in the model part of the, you know, the consumption or income aggregates. But this is something that's absolutely essential for people to really understand how the host communities and the displaced community interact, and understand, you know, why this might create sometimes some tensions before them. So I think all that, this knowledge certainly has a lot of impact.
Yeah. Thank you, Olivier. Yes, those were some great examples, and I'm sure that there are more. I want to take this opportunity to sort of bring in Winida from a government perspective, because I think that's the central, the center of gravity, right, in terms of impact for policies and for programming. What is your experience in Indonesia?
So I think once population become visible, we can measure the population, and also we can understand more, and also it helps the policymaker to act, to make some action. So let me give an example. So this is also part of working with ESCAP. We, so in 2024, we are working with ministries to build, to make the first ever CRVS vital statistics report in Indonesia. So before that, we never know that there are so many children in Indonesia that don't have ID card. So babies that they don't register right after their birth. So more than 3 million children are still unrecognized in the system. By having this fact, we know that there should be something to do, and it cannot be done only by a single institution. So we need to work together, not only the institution who work for the services, but also with National Statistics Office, because each program has to be monitored and evaluated. And this initiative also built the stronger collaboration with other ministries, and like Rachael said, that the whole of society is also important, because no actor can work alone. And the recent one, Indonesia also faced a natural disaster in Sumatra. More than 100,000 people were affected. And through the presidential instruction, all the ministries have worked together, and BPS lead the data for this rehabilitation program, and still working ongoing until now, and maybe until 3 years, so that all the displaced people can be rehabilitated after this disaster. So from these two examples, we know that data have an important part in making decision and also immediate response to the problem, to the issues.
Thank you. Those were very tangible examples and very important to keep in mind. Volker, I'm going to bring you into this as well, because in UNHCR it's been such a transformation in working with socioeconomic data, and of course we've been on the advocacy side of things. It's not as if we have development financing to lift programs, but we certainly have advocacy as part of the toolbox. What, you know, if you were to sort of take a step back and give a perspective of the impact that you have seen, what would you highlight?
I think we start exactly where you started, by saying that we don't do development as UNHCR. We're not in the business of even initiating the road to recovery in operational terms. Our role is to make the right connections within host governments and with partners. And for that, I go back to what Olivier mentioned at the beginning. We need that common language. And the common language of governments and development partners is statistical data. And for a long time, we have treated that as something that was playing up outside our sphere of interest or responsibility as UNHCR. So I like the example already that Olivier mentioned of Iraq, but I can think also of the work that we did together in in Pakistan, based on the survey we did with the National Statistics Office there. I'm thinking of the work that UNHCR did with the National Statistics Office in Zambia. Very direct impact on how the EU was directing investments and championed inclusion in support of the government of Zambia vis-a-vis refugees and displaced populations. So the story repeats itself of needing to lean in to develop that foundation, that common language, that legitimate evidence that cannot come from us or a humanitarian actor working in isolation. It has to be built on a recognized standard, joint ownership, that can feed seamlessly into policy dialogues. And in all of these examples, we've seen ever-growing take-up and interest, to the point actually that one of our partners, the National Statistics Office in Cameroon, became a capacity builder for governments in the region on how to better drive inclusion that then results into policy change or legislative change. So there is true leveling up over the last few years through these examples, whilst not being overly ambitious or changing our role as UNHCR by operational overreach. We will not be a development actor, but we can certainly have those bridges be more robust and easier to travel.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. This has been transformational, and it's important that that partnership really becomes tangible in that way. In the JDC, I'm just going to take a moment from our perspective, because in the JDC we do a lot to try and track the impact of the investments in data that we make, and we boast of having seen investments of the World Bank amounting to $4.7 billion in programs in affected countries, countries affected of forced displacement, where refugees have been included. This is obviously many countries, and a lot of those examples are in Chad, in the Central African Republic. Colombia is certainly also on that list, and a couple of other countries in Latin America that are hosting Venezuelans. And it is a variety of different programs. It's agribusiness, it's social safety nets, it's inclusion into social registries, on that sort of both financing part, but also policy part. In Ethiopia, we also looked at the reform of the access to work for refugees. That was also sort of informed by data. Those are just a few examples. A lot of that is on our website, and I'm very happy to share for people who are interested in knowing more about that. But that's great. So data, it cannot sit on a shelf. It needs to have impact, and it needs to be pushed into impact. And the more the national context, the governments own it, the more it actually has an opportunity to have impact. Now I'd like to sort of turn our conversation to another element, which is about how we connect better with academia and researchers. And so academics and researchers are among the main users of socioeconomic data, often helping to shed very important light on the impact of forced displacement, as we've heard today and yesterday. And the question here is, what can be done to ensure a stronger engagement with academia and researchers that would lead to mutual benefits? So on one hand, providing researchers with access to appropriately disaggregated, anonymized data for research, and on the other hand, increasing research that meets policy and programming needs. Can I turn to you, Rachael?
Thank you. I was just thinking back then, reflecting back to when I first met Olivier. I think it was 22 years ago, wasn't it? And we're working on the International Household Survey Network, and was really about kind of getting microdata used. And obviously, there's still a long way to go on that, I would say. But I mean, I think what we see in ESCAP, and I spoke already about the kind of our DASH team and whole of society approach. Through that, we definitely have hear more and more examples of what NSOs are doing to work more closely with academia. We see in Turkey, where they've got a statistical council, which actually includes academia, as well as government, private sector, civil society, but helping to actually shape the statistics program. So not just engaging at the end of the kind of statistical process, but engaging at the beginning to actually shape that. But I think the other program that we're doing as well is on civil registration and vital statistics. I always feel a bit of a fraud when I've got Petra as well, kind of in the audience, who actually leads on our work on this. But one of the things we have been doing through that program is working much more closely with researchers. So we have a collaborative on administrative data research and training, so CART program, where we've actually been supporting researchers from national statistics offices, but actually not, of course, limited to that, from civil registration authorities, health, sectoral agencies, as well as researchers and academics, but really providing them with training and helping them to actually develop research papers, so kind of going much further than just the data side, but to really help them to actually put together a research proposal and research papers. And we've been doing that work for the last, I think it's 3 or 4 years, and we do it in collaboration as well with the Economic Commission for Africa. So that has the added benefit that we're actually bringing together researchers not just from Asia Pacific, but also from Africa as well. So we've been providing them with training, actually bringing them together a couple of times as well so that they can kind of learn from each other. We provide mentorship and really kind of helping to support them in that process. And we see people kind of, moving from one cohort when they've actually produced a paper to then becoming kind of mentors and helping with the next cohort. But I think one of the benefits that we've seen from that we probably hadn't anticipated possibly was the working across different regions and really kind of, from very different backgrounds as well, and bringing academics together with staff from all over kind of governments, and just kind of from very different perspectives, but very much kind of learning from each other, but all focused on the same thing, which is essentially getting the data used. Thanks.
Super, thank you, Rachel. And on that note, there's a lot of researchers here to connect with in that network. So I encourage you and Petra to link up as much as possible. Olivier, some reflections from you on this topic.
Yeah, you cannot talk about microdata without, having me talk about it also. We've seen fantastic, presentations yesterday and today, which all had one thing in common. I think they were all empirical and based on microdata. And I think if we expanded this crowd here, we would still have, most of the analysis related to forced displacement, making use of microdata. Access to this data is not always easy. And as Rachel mentioned, we started working on that 22 years ago, trying to convince national statistical agencies to share the data, some microdata, not necessarily as open data. Actually, we even recommend not to share them as microdata, but to make this data more easily accessible to legitimate researchers for legitimate purposes. It's not been easy, to be honest, but if there is one area where it's even much more difficult than any other, it's clearly on forced displacement due to the sensitivity of the data. And here, you know me, I never miss a chance to really express my love to the team working on the microdata library at UNHCR. This is a project that was sponsored by JDC and initiated by JDC. The creation of a catalog of microdata, which, when I checked yesterday, had 1,075 data sets in it. This is absolutely incredible. To be honest, it took us much more time at the World Bank we have more than 1,000 data sets, but to build a catalog with a small team with 1,075 data sets, it's an absolutely incredible achievement for UNHCR. Behind that, there was a small team. Unfortunately, the budget cuts has reduced the team. There was absolutely no fat to be trimmed in that team. So when we reduced the resource for this project, we're clearly cutting to the bone. But these are the kind of data that enable a lot of the research work. So, I really hope that this will eventually come back and that UNHCR will be able to maintain this effort. Now, having data accessible is not enough. The data has to be properly protected. When we started disseminating microdata 20 years ago, I think we didn't have the same challenge with privacy protection. The technology today and the quantity of data that's out there, including geospatial data and others, make data more easy to re-identify or to misuse. So I think we need to keep investing in statistical disclosure control, data privacy techniques to be sure that you guys, the researchers, still will maintain access to this data, especially the data that will come from the government, not the data that you collect yourselves. We'll have to be able to prove that this data can be shared continuously with, in line with the national data privacy regulations. One thing that we also started recently, also with our JDC support, is an analysis of data use, because it's not because data is analyzed that they are used, but data use clearly goes through the analytics and the kind of research that has been done and demonstrated today and yesterday. We have started this small project to try to really understand who use what data, when and how, using machine learning and AI and a very large corpus. We're going to use the overturned corpus to try to really qualify the use of data in publications. It is relatively easy, not very easy, but relatively easy to do for academic publications because you guys know how to cite data sets. When we look at project documents, when we look at the kind of policy documents and others, it is much, much more difficult to identify what data sets have been used. So we're actually having to design some very specific models to try to extract the information on what data has been used to inform these policies. The advantage of having what will be a very large database, a kind of graph database of data use related to forced displacement, is that we will not only be able to qualify data use, who has used what data, when and for what, but we will also have a possibility to identify what data set have not been used. And then we'll have to look at why. Is it because there's an issue of relevance, of quality, of access, and others? So I think there's a lot to be done there. And then last thing I would like to mention, at the World Bank, we started, I think 2 years ago, we changed the policy on our policy research working paper. We have, I think 11,000 policy research working paper published by bank staff. Until 2 years ago, you could just write your paper, you publish it, and mission accomplished. Now we have a rule, you have to provide a reproducibility package. So you want your paper to be out, you have to be very clear on what data have been used. If the data can be shared, you have to share the data, but we understand that not all data can be shared. But you have to share a very clean copy of all the code you have used that can be computationally reproduced from A to Z, and this is tested within a bank. So I know that some peer-reviewed journals require that, but it's typically not required for working paper. I think for any analysis that is influencing some policies or decision-making, I think this has to be a requirement for transparency, for credibility, for quality control, but also because this is an absolute fantastic source of information for people who want to learn how to analyze data. I mean, we've seen some of the slides that were presented here. You see that there's a lot of complexity, methodological complexity. It might be a little bit intimidating for, researchers in statistical agencies, in think tanks that do not have, the PhDs that you have to do the same. So let them learn from that by publishing your code. They will learn from that. Maybe sometimes they will correct what you've done or adapt what you've done. But I think this is something that we should also push for.
Thank you so much. That was super comprehensive, and thank you for the shout out, both on behalf of the JDC and UNHCR. Winida, from a government's perspective, and from Indonesia specifically, what relationship do you have with academia and research, and where do you see the opportunities?
Yeah, thank you. So besides producing and disseminating the aggregate statistics, BPS also produce and make data set available for everyone. And of course, it should be follow the procedures mechanism. And these 2 days, we already heard that there are many results from the research that can inform policy making. But I think research also can work the upward stream, like informing the National Statistics Office what variable or what data can be collected by the NSO. Because NSO work under using the framework of GSBPM, Generic Statistical Business Process Model. We start from specified needs. So if we never know about what are needed by society, by government. We never know that is really important and become the priority in statistics operation. So please support us also with your research so that statistics office have a grounded argument to produce some statistics that are really important. And I also want to highlight that not all phenomena can be statistically captured. In addition to our last census, 2020 census, we work with National Research and Innovation Board, and we also have one college here. So we work with this research team, and we combine this quantitative and qualitative analysis, mostly working to the vulnerable group like indigenous people. There are not significant statistics in the data, right? So they should be visible in the data, but also can be captured in another way. So by working together with through this project, statistics staffs also have this point of view regarding the insignificant data that we usually capture but are not significant in the data. But and then in the future data collection, we have in mind that what approach can be improved to better capture the vulnerable or invisible population.
Super, thank you very much. Volker, would you like to come in also with a reflection on research and sort of that, you know, how can we make those research come closer to policy making and vice versa, policymakers inviting research in?
Thanks, Maja. A quick thought is that our role is really one of an enabler. We don't, by comparison, also just with members of the panel here, we don't have that same structured engagement with researchers and academia writ large. In fact, I'm very grateful for also the JDC's work in bringing that just a bit closer to our work. But really the value, and of course in the context of drastically reduced humanitarian funding, our role is and should be going forward that of an enabler. Olivier has very kindly spoken about the work on microdata, which I'm also very proud of. He underplayed his own contribution. Without his team, we would have not gotten there. But certainly this is something that I feel is absolutely critical to maintain. I personally am working on this in order to make sure that even with the minimal resources, we continue providing this public good. And hopefully we're headed for better times, not just in terms of funding, but also in terms of recognition of that value. And in that vein, I just want to land on one point specifically. Olivier implied it already, but the value also comes through demonstrating how that data is translating into products that then features in policy dialogues that then leads to transformation. And that through line we're struggling, I think collectively, but certainly as UNHCR and as we're having to make tough funding decisions, that is an argument that I'm lacking. So it's an appeal to this room and beyond to help us with that documentation, with that transparency on what is used, what is informing evidence, and then we can see much clearer how that line from data through change is actually shaping up. So the future will remain one of enabler, and hopefully we can get in turn help in order to fulfill that role to everyone's satisfaction.
Thank you, Volker. Great perspectives and very diverse, I would say, and you know, it all comes to a whole. Now, I would be amiss if I don't mention JDC's initiative on the marketplace, which is designed to sort of have researchers and policymakers meet on a platform where they can discuss projects that they can collaborate on in sort of a supply and demand fashion. and where we also can have financiers join up and find their sort of opportunity to support something that they would like to see develop. I'm not going to go into detail on that. You have the master of of the marketplace idea right there, and so do spend the break to discuss with him what's happening and where it's all going, right? And that was Domenico, if anybody was in doubt. Just making sure, right? Okay. All right. Well, thank you for this rich round. I think we got into several elements. We're going to move on to the last two questions, just in time. Statistical inclusion is increasing across different countries and contexts that host forcibly displaced and are affected by statelessness. This also includes this region, Asia Pacific. But it's not very frequent. You know, I say 25 countries, but the world is much bigger than that. What will it take to move from one-off inclusive surveys to fully mainstream government-owned national statistics, inclusive statistics? Are there regional initiatives, including in Asia Pacific, that offer a replicable model? Rachel, I'm going to put you on the spot.
Okay, I will try my best. So I think one model that we could look at is the work on CRVS. So on the Civil Registration Vital Statistics, it's really started with a very strong political commitment. And at the end of the day, you know, we've talked a lot about the technical aspects, but actually it requires a political commitment. So we have that political commitment for the whole of the Asia Pacific region with strong ministerial declaration back in 2014 and then the new one last year, you know, where countries actually agree that this is important, that every birth does need to be registered, every single birth, regardless of, you know, the parents' kind of, you know, nationality, the state that, you know, where they're from, etc. So every birth registered, but also every death certified and explained as well, and as well as marriage registration. But having that political commitment, I think, is the first thing. Also, at the regional level, the CRVS work as well, you know, we've got a regional action framework. We've got a regional steering group. The regional steering group brings countries together with other partners as well, where they can actually collectively look at what we do, look at what needs to be done, look at the gaps, but also we do a 5-yearly progress assessment. When you do an assessment that's across the whole region, then I think as well that can be very powerful because it does show that actually, you know, some countries are making more progress than others. Some are not making much progress in particular areas, you know, and I think that is very powerful in terms of spurring one another on and in terms of really learning from each other. The other part of that work, for which we're extremely grateful, is we do have a lot of funding from the Bloomberg Foundation. And that doesn't mean that actually then we can support countries at the national level as well. Mm-hmm. And our partners are also able to do that. So kind of really recognizing that we kind of need to be able to do things at the national level as well. So I think it's kind of bringing all of those three things together, that political commitment, the regional kind of spurring each other on to action, as well as the national taking work forward. Thanks.
Excellent, thank you, Rachel. That's a great example, and indeed we're talking about a national statistical system that is completely fundamental. Winida, what would you say?
Yeah, for make the inclusion mainstream in the government, I think it is. I agree with what Rachel said. The political will is the most important thing. But I also remember on the side meeting, Petra from ESCAP also said that there's no single data source is perfect. That is perfect. There are always blind spots there. So in this awareness, in Indonesia, we are starting the initiative on Synergy on International Migration Data Initiative, which initially built in response to GCM, Global Compact for Migration. When we are aware that the available data on international migration in Indonesia are very scarce, we we gather all the ministries that have concern on migration and also stakeholder on migration in one forum, SDMI. And through this forum, we discuss about data available in the ministries and also how we can improve that, how we can access the data, how can we also improve the capacity of the ministry's resource. And it works so far very well, and we are now improving the data access with other ministries where BPS also can interlinkage the data with other data sources so that it can also provide ministries with what they need from the data that are not available in their data sets. So, and through this initiative, it's developed into other mobility statistics and also aspects on mobility. Like for example, through the network built with ESCAP, we have also informed that there are projects on IDEC, International Data Alliance on Children on the Move, which also under this umbrella of mobility on mobility aspects. We are working also with the ministries to assess what data are available regarding children on the move and children affected by this movement. And we are still ongoing project, but I think this is a good example how we can work together. We cannot work alone. And we cannot rely on single data sources. We already acknowledge that there are limitations regarding traditional survey, and in the era where National Statistical Office moved toward modernizing their methodology, I think we also need to think about other data sources and work together, not in a isolation environment, but work together within the country, but also with the broader network, which also help us to learn from other countries what best practice that are can make them better, and we can also learn from that. So.
Thank you so much, Winida. Those are important perspectives: political commitment, regional collaboration assessment frameworks, peer-to-peer work, support, financing, and the demand. If I sort of dwell on the financing just for a moment, because data costs money, inclusion costs money. How can that? I mean, what role does capacity building and financing play in this, and how could one mainstream that? What are some ideas around that? Olivier, I would sort of be tempted to ask you, because you have, World Bank is probably more mighty in that experience than any of us.
I wish. I
hope.
we don't decide on national survey programs. But I mean, the one-off survey issue is not something that is specific to forced displacement. I mean, we've seen that in all domains. Unfortunately, I remember many years ago when Paris 21 was created and came with this concept of NSDS, the National Strategies for the Development of Statistics. We made all these fantastic plans where we brought everyone, in a big room like this, and we asked everyone what kind of data do you need and when. And so we made these fantastic plans. The 10-year program, when you put the census, what survey do you do at what time, which population are you going to cover, for what purpose, and these were fantastic plans. Then we leave the room, and we leave the stats office alone with no money. And what happened then? UNICEF comes and says, okay, well, that year I need a mix. And the World Bank will come and say, okay, well, you will have a budget, but you need to take it the same year for doing an LSMS. And then, and basically all these plans were dead, born dead. So, you need relatively, guaranteed funding for relatively, I wouldn't say long term, but without that, the low-income countries. I'm not talking about, Indonesia, and countries or like Thailand that have very clear, survey programs that are multi-year, but for most of the low-income countries, it was absolutely mission impossible to go out of this one-off survey program. And the problem is that each donor came with its own standard questionnaire or standard reports and things like that. Now, two two things have happened. For the World Bank, we understood that, this was absolutely not sustainable. So in Africa North, Africa West, and Africa East, we have these very large financing opportunities for countries. This is lending. I mean, it's concessional lending, but they can borrow money for a statistical program over quite a few years, and they don't have to try to find, $300,000 for one survey, $500,000 for another one. This is a program that has, billions of dollars for countries that are willing to invest in their own national survey programs, and they do it. Some countries would prefer grants, but they still do it. So that's the good news. And I think that's a necessary condition. I mean, if you don't have the money for consistent programs that really collect the right data at the right time, it's not going to happen. Something else, I mean, that's somewhat related. I don't know if any of you attended the United Nations Statistics Commission this year. Every year we talk a lot about data. This year it was all about metadata. We're not talking so much about data anymore. Part of this is because of AI, and we realized that AI does not communicate well with data. AI communicates with metadata before it can reach your data. And so there's a lot of interest in AI readiness, in making data sets more suitable for AI dissemination, to be an input for the chatbots or the modern search engines. But that has, independently from the AI side, I think it has a very, useful impact, is that we start having much better documentation and understanding of what's in every one of these data collection exercises at the national level. And that's where we start realizing that, the same question is asked in 10 different ways. The population, the way you define a household, or the scope of survey, the population you want to cover, all that has, slight difference from survey to survey, from operation to operation. And I think that they start being a real interest and commitment to start fixing that. I mean, we're working with Rwanda, for example. The National Institute for Statistics of Rwanda is, at the moment, really documenting a lot of its data set, based on international standards and national standards, trying to understand where, things, match or not across surveys. And I think that would be part also of the, this inclusiveness of the statistical system. And
potentially saving
money,
right?
And getting the right data, and with data comparable across sources. I mean, that's something that hopefully will. It's not going to happen overnight. But I see that as, something that starts to happen.
An opportunity. Yeah, great. You answered the last question for yourself there. Thank you. Rachel.
I was just going to add an example as well. I'm not sure this always means more money necessarily as well. So we see, for instance, in the Philippines, they've been working on kind of moving a lot of their data collection to community-based monitoring system. By having more data at the community level, they're better able to target a lot of their kind of social safety net programs and other kind of government services. And they would argue, and I haven't seen all the data on it yet, but they would argue that it's saving them money by having better data. So I don't think this is always a case of actually having to spend more money. It's also, if you spend money in the right places, then it enables you to better target your government services and things, and perhaps also, make those more effective. So saving money as well.
Terrific. Thank you, Rachel. That's a seamless transition to the last question, which I will, I think, only ask Winida and Volker at this point. So essentially, if you could, in 30 seconds, identify one concrete action by a government, by international organizations or research community that would accelerate statistical inclusion in the next 5 years, what would that be? Volker.
I would actually answer that by building on the previous set of questions and answers by saying we need smarter investments. I'm looking at this from the perspective of low-income countries, often fragile or collapsed state contexts. And of course, we cannot imagine that there is an easy road to statistical inclusion when we have an emergency, refugee crisis, not on day dot. But the problem is that we're still living in a very bifurcated reality where an emergency response, a humanitarian response, works in its own ecosystem when it comes to data, and that transition through statistical inclusion to ownership, sustainable action, and government leadership only kicks in much, much later, if at all. And Rachael made a point that applies to mine as well, which is that it's not about necessarily investing more, but investing smarter. We cannot maybe do it in the first month or first 6 months, but there should be a target that within the first year, from within the humanitarian investment in data, which is still significant even after the 2025 cuts, we need to have an on-ramp to statistical inclusion approach. We know this takes time, and that's often the excuse why it's not viable to think of statistical inclusion in a humanitarian context. So if we've managed to challenge that, and challenge those who set the pace, both financially and policy-wise, on the data work in humanitarian responses, then we can really level up again. And I hope that in the current context of a change and new ideas, there's an opening for that.
Hear, hear. Winida, the last word is yours.
Yeah, thank you. So we talk about statistical inclusion, but I also want to raise that NSO inclusion into the issue, because most of the time NSO are excluded from the program, and when they are facing difficulties in data, they call the NSO and ask about the data. So I think that's also have to be in mind that NSO has the resources. We have methodology, we have data system that already built like for a long time ago, and it can be used to improve the data availability, the data quality, and so on. And NSO mostly respond to the data needs. So the specified needs is very important, but also NSO can work to advocate the ministerial and institution in order to work together so that we can provide data, because not all the data are provided by NSO, but NSO can lead this all institutions in order to build the data system. And what has been done so far by BPS Indonesia is still limited, but I think through this forum also we heard so many important things that also can improve our knowledge in order to build our future data collection. Thank you.
What a perfect place to end. Power to the NSO. I want to thank you very much for engaging in this conversation. I'm a lawyer who's fallen in love with statistics, and you can count on the Joint Data Center's commitment to pursue this agenda as we go forward. Thank you so much.